Well, this was the surprise! I finally changed the name of the channel. Since I'm recording this a week before I made the changes, I don't know if it's ShadowXImpact or ShadowXImpact or even ShadowXImpact X, because I can't check if the name is available before officially changing the name, but I hope you'll like the one I've picked. I have been told so many times that I needed to do it because people couldn't remember it, but also because the algorithm wouldn't have liked it. So months ago I simply decided to do it when Natlan was released. As you can see, I also changed channel logo, the banner, which is a drawing I have been working on for months, and at the end of the video there's also a new outro screen with another drawing I originally made for the banner of the channel. Anyway, this is a very long video, so we should probably focus on it right now, but first, this is a theory video. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. With that out of the way, in this video we will talk about the entire history of Natlan, era by era, and I have some pretty huge theories for you that I hope you're gonna like, even though I already know from experience that you will hate one of them. Well then, get comfy, hug your Saurians, and let's get this video started. Natlan's eras are very different from those of the other nations, so don't worry, I'll make a small recap at the end of the video. Natlan's lore begins when the second Who Came arrived. He fought and won against the Primordial One in the so-called War of Vengeance. He destroyed the blasphemous Citadel, the unified nation of which the ruins are everywhere in Natlan, and then the heavens and earth collapsed, so Teyvat was capsized. Interestingly, the second Who Came is defined as the Returning King, as if he was originally from the old world, while the Primordial One, who fell into the realms devoid of light, which could be the Abyss, is the dispossessed Divine Envoy, and this makes me think that my theory about it being the Aeon Sophia, who in Gnosticism was expelled from the Pleroma and then created the imperfect world, might be right. Anyway, the Kingdom of the Bishops barely managed to survive, but its ruler, the Dragon Sovereign of Fire, the Flame Lord Shuko-Atl, was gravely corrupted by the Abyss and turned into a dark, black and purple monster. The Heavenly Envoys tried to defend the people from the dragon, but some were burned to a crisp, others were devoured, and only one managed to protect both the people and the White Tree, an Irmisol tree that I believe to be the quantum-looking tree in the Masters of the Night Winds area. The tree was severed from the main one in Sumeru, reason why Natlan doesn't have ley lines, and the envoy barely survived thanks to the few leaves left on it, that later turned, it seems, into the Night Kingdom. Sometime later, from the Kingdom of the Bishops came a quote-unquote human, the wisest of the dragons, who disagreed with his kin and was more interested in the future. So he took a yet unextinguished primordial kindling and left the kingdom on a journey that led him to meet the creator's most beloved but weakest of species, the humans. They had lost the guidance of the Heavenly Envoys but also their memories, and had reverted back to savages, reason why this is called the Tribal Era, and tribal here means savage because the tribes didn't exist back then. The wise dragon decided to give them knowledge thanks to the primordial kindling, and although this caused the birth of a new civilization, it also gave them pre-ordered destinies, but above all, something the Primordial One didn't want them to have: evolution. The dragon was then able to foresee the future, which he told Chak, the first barbarian who climbed on Hanan Pacha, the floating island the dragon created. The blood of the humans will merge with the land, mixing two species and two bloodlines as one, creating a new kind of civilization from which the ferocious savior of the two worlds would have eventually been born, the one who will finally defeat the Flame Lord and ascend to the Ancient of Thrones. Let me repeat that, the Ancient of Thrones. They already existed who knows how many millennia before the Archon War. Let that sink in. Anyway, this wisest of dragons was none other than Washo Clown Ubakan, the Sage of the Stolen Flame. The sage then taught Chak how to use phlogiston, and in turn he taught the other people who joined in on Hanan Pacha, which gave them the means to finally fight back against their enemies, all without the dragons ever realizing what was going on. Everything the sage had done was part of his plan that required the people to be completely independent from the Night Kingdom, especially because, as a dragon himself, the gods of the Night Kingdom used to be his enemies in ancient days. Still, something unspecified happened, although it was probably a bit of corruption, and the sage became a raging wicked dragon, so Chuck, together with his companions, fought him and won. The dragon was imprisoned in a stagnant void, and the first ever tribe was founded. When Chuck grew old and his companions all had died, on his very last day he climbed a high mountain and reignited his own flame. He called out to his dead companions and the gods of the Night Kingdom responded. This is how the Wyob came to life. It is an entity without a physical body, a consciousness of collective thought, and home of the ancestors' souls that came to life when the people began communicating with the kingdom of the Lord of the Night, reason why I think Chuck and his companions themselves are the Wyob, and they've been protecting Natlan ever since. Before moving on to the next era, let's briefly talk about the Night Kingdom. This place is basically a mirror image of Natlan, much like Xbalanque was a mirror image of Tibet. As we said before, it was originally created by a divine envoy with the leaves that survived on Natlan's severed Irminsul tree. This envoy is the Lord of the Night. The cat Night Soul Spirit we met in the Chambers of the Night Trial told us that it's a female entity that usually sleeps, and the Night Soul Spirits are part of her dream, but when she wakes up from time to time, they become a strain of her mind. Now this Lord of the Night is also defined as the Lord of Crossroads and the Guardian of the Land of Night in the stone tablets of the ancient temple where the Science of the Canopy used to live. She is an envoy that accepts everyone to show them the ancient dream, and the people used to make offerings to her and the Father in Black, but I have no idea who it might be. Lastly, she's also defined as the key keeper of countless secrets, but also the great spirit that dwells within that dreamscape, which is what the Night Kingdom essentially is. Now, who is a divine envoy or a shade that is asleep most of the time and awakens only once in a while, the rules of the ley lines, and that has been associated with Hecate, the goddess represented by three entities, also known as the goddess of the crossroads in Greek mythology. It's the Shade of Fate, the Heavenly Principles, the one who, in Xbalanque, was represented by Understarter, who I still believe to be from Natlan considering her tribal designs on the statue, who was also depicted by three identical statues, just like Hecate. Lastly, about the Night Kingdom, because it acts as a substitute for the missing ley lines in Natlan, it's also responsible for the absence of people from Natlan in the other nations. The Wyob, the entity that protects the people both on land and in case of their demise in the Night Kingdom, would need to use too much power to keep someone protected past Natlan's borders, and without a connection to the Night Kingdom, the people would experience memory loss and emotional dysfunctions. As we know, the ley lines and, in Natlan's case, the Night Kingdom, store people's memories, so for a person from Natlan not to be connected to the Night Kingdom would be just like being severed from the ley lines, and that would affect their memories as a consequence. This leads me to one specific question. We know that the Fatui will burn down Irminsul, so what will happen to the people then? Back to the history of Natlan, in the era that followed the tribal one, the tribes were finally founded, but the people kept fighting each other to conquer more land, and they even went as far as to challenge, terrify, and defeat the dragons in their own kingdom. The sage, still in prison, watched this tragedy unfolding, but his original plan was still on track. Evolution was still happening the way he envisioned, even though Chuck reconnected the people with the Night Kingdom and, as a consequence, the Envoy of Dusk, so again the Shade of Fate, got involved. The tribes then began to fight to find out who the strongest warrior among them was, and eventually an extraordinary warrior appeared. He defeated everybody, conquered the city of Deep Wells, the old place of the bishops that became known as Natlan, and from there he ruled over the tribes. Out of compassion, he then freed the Sage of the Sullen Flame, and together they fought against the Dragon Sovereign of Fire in the great volcano of Tolan. In the end, both the Flame Lord and the hero fell down from the sky and died, but the hero was resurrected by the flames, he ascended to Archonhood and received Primal Fire as a tribute. This hero was Xbalanque, the first person to ever be resurrected by the Sacred Flames, the first human to have ever ascended to Archonhood, but above all, the one who established the rules that allowed humans to become Archons after he borrowed the power from the heavens, Ronova, which in case you didn't know, it's a demon from the Ars Goetia, Ronove, and this makes me think that this is the Shade of Fate's name. Then, standing before the Flame Lord's body, I'm pretty sure Xbalanque and the Sage took the dragon's eyes and turned them into the golden entities. Each of them took one and hid them in different places. Xbalanque, the resurrected corpse, buried it under the monument in the final paradise, while the Sage, the silver dragon, swallowed it and brought it to Natlan, the ancient city that lies across a narrow stretch of water north of the Flower Feather clan, so this massive building in the distance. After that, Xbalanque arose from the throne, and remember this because this is very important, he entered the Sacred Flame, while the Sage took over the nation while waiting for a successor to appear. What Xbalanque did sounds a lot like what Mavuika did to put on hold her life, so I think there might be a chance Xbalanque will come back to life, probably in the last Archon quest in 5.3. Moving on, in the next era, the tribes kept fighting for the land, even though there was a dark tide that arose from the sky's edge, and I believe we're talking about the forbidden knowledge Apep told us about, because it's a power that comes from beyond the sky, so we're around the time when the celestial nails came down. If we were talking about any other nation, this would have been what I've always called the era of the gods of old, but in Natlan there are no gods at all, which is strange, so I wonder if it has something to do with the ley lines being absent. Anyway, this era was marked by three major events: the tyranny of the Python King of the Ineffable City, the tribe's obsession for supremacy, and the rise of an unprophesized hero. The Python King was the mastermind of all the tribes, the self-proclaimed Sacred Lord that ruled over Natlan ever since Xbalanque entered the Sacred Flame. Of course, this is still the Sage of the Stolen Flame, who by then was called Och-Khan, most likely from Och-Kanatlan and the last word from his name, Washaklan Ubak Khan. He loved Xbalanque so much that he believed no one else should have ever been allowed to rule the nation, and this obsession eventually changed him, turning him into a tyrant king. He built yet another city in the sky, the Ineffable City, this time above Och-Kanatlan, also defined as a city above the clouds, a sky-faring ship, or even a floating garden. The Python King harbored a great hatred for the dragons. He murmured non-human languages in his sleep because at the end of the day he was still a dragon. He used to wear a mask to hide his draconic appearance, but slowly but surely his pupils became vertical like those of a snake. You know, a python. He imposed new drastic rules to assert his dominance. He forbid the people from performing sacrifices, which was actually a good thing. He forbid them from praying to the Night Kingdom, and eventually he even forbid them from following the instructions Xbalanque left behind. Then the Python King began to gather artisans from different tribes to dig under Och-Kanatlan and uncover the secrets and the massive advanced automatons that the ancient civilization left behind, but one day he stumbled upon the deepest secret of the ancient civilization, which unsettled him so much that he closed the stone gates with the artisans still inside and set the whole place on fire. On the other hand, Natlan's land completely changed over the years, and it became completely inhospitable for the dragons that simply went extinct. The tribes then lost their original goal because there were no dragons to hunt anymore, so they became greedy beyond recognition, consumed by the desire for supremacy. At the same time, the Wayab began to fight against each other and they pushed the tribes to do the same, in order to figure out who would have put an end to the era of the Ancients, that is, who would have defeated the last dragon standing, the Python King. Out of nowhere, an unprophesized, unplanned hero appeared, the Scarlet-Eyed Youth, who came back to the Ineffable City from the kingdom where water flowed as rays of light, which is another way to call the Night Kingdom. and there he met a blind, stooped old woman who told him to leave that place and go to the marsh, so the rest of Natlan, to look for companions who would have stood against the Python King, even at the cost of their lives. We don't know who that woman was, but I feel like that was the Shade of Fate. So did the hero visit each tribe one by one. Where people could only be convinced by fighting, he fought, and where the people were disillusioned, he convinced them with his great ambitions. The first hero who joined him was an inquisitive young Nanaskayan girl, Sakuk, who owned a dolled feather accessory and later fell in love with the Scarlet-Eyed Youth. Then came two Metzli twins, Atahualpa and Huáscar, and the latter had a previous encounter with the Python King and still bore the scars of his whip. Lastly came the taciturn Huitzlan hero, Yupanqui, who strongly believed in the coexistence between humans and Saurians. Because the group needed someone who knew the layout and secret passages of the king's place, they began to look for a rumored craftsman Yupanqui heard about, and eventually Sakuk found him. He was drunk, loitering in an abandoned tavern with his disfigured face half covered by his hood. Does that remind you of someone? Anyway, she convinced him to join the group because he made for her father the feather accessory that she carried with her. He told the heroes that he was taken by the Python King to uncover the secrets buried beneath Natlan, and that he was disfigured when the king set the place on fire, and that he only managed to survive because he noticed an alternative path out of the ruins. The group, now complete, finally set out for the ineffable city. Yupanqui died by the dragon's flames, the craftsman by his giant butcher's blade, and Huáscar directly by his hands, leaving only Atahualpa, who ruined his voice screaming when he saw his twin brother die before him, Sakuk, and the Scarlet-Eyed Youth. The young hero then set the ineffable city on fire, and with it, the half-human Python King that was corrupted by the Abyss, who then fell into the pitch-black mire below, so he's probably still alive, waiting for us in Natlan. When the heroes came back triumphant, the tribes finally regained their authority over their lands, so they all recognized them and made a pact of armistice, which marked the beginning of the Grand Alliance. But the Scarlet-Eyed Youth still had one thing to do. Just like Xbalanque, he had to die after the dragon had been defeated and be resurrected. So he sacrificed himself, and since the Wayab unexpectedly found the hero they were looking for, they recognized his actions and crowned him, allowing him to be resurrected and becoming most likely the new Pyro Archon. As time passed, the Scarlet-Eyed Youth, just like Xbalanque, entered the Sacred Flame, so maybe he's coming back in life in 5.3 as well. Atahualpa died of old age, and only Sakuk outlived everybody, until she fulfilled her dream to buy the craftsman's original jewelry, so she set off into the night and never came back, leaving behind only one request for her tribe: to erase the craftsman's name from history. Once again, before moving on, there's a detail I'd like to discuss. In Natlan there are always at least 6 heroes, and each of them belongs to one tribe, but when it comes to this group, things seems to be different, but they're actually not. Sakuk is from the Children of the Echoes, Yupanqui from the Science of the Canopy, the Craftsman is from Mictlan, the Masters of the Nightwind, because it is said that he came from smoke and the tribe lives in the Canyon of Night Smoke. The Scarlet-Eyed hero is from the Flower Feather clan, because he is related to those who came from the mountain peaks, and that's where the village is, and because when he defeated the Python King, he gave his tribe its own land, and Natlan is basically in front of the Flower Feather clan, plus their history is strictly connected to the dragons, and their Saurians, the Cuckosaurs, are the closest Saurians to the Pyro Bishops. This leaves the twin brothers from the People of the Springs as the odd ones out, but this conundrum is really easy to solve. The Moment of Attainment tells us that Atahualpa is related to those who came from the Spring Source, which is what we would expect, while Huáscar was related to the people from the Federal Lands, the same Federal Lands where martial prowess prevails, so he became the ancestor of the Collective of Plenty. a clan that is all about strength, of which their village is literally next to the people of the springs at the foot of the great volcano of Tolan, and thanks to its nutrients and the vicinity to the sea, it will actually make the land extremely fertile. Hence the land provides plenty for the people. Before the recap, there is something we need to discuss about Xbalanque and Natlan. Many of you know that I believe that there might have been 7 ancient Archons before those who won the Archon War, the theory I talked about in this video. Now, we know that Natlan had 3 major unique Archons, Xbalanque, the Scarlet-Eyed Youth, and Mavuika. If Xbalanque won the Archon War, then the timeline would be very strange because 2500 years are not enough for everything these 3 heroes have done. Then there's Natlan. Unlike Old Mondstadt, the capital of the Anemo nation that fell because of the Archon War, which turned Mondstadt into what it is today, Natlan would have become Natlan's capital during the Archon War, and it would have fallen when the Scarlet-Eyed Youth appeared, so recently, something like 1200 years ago maybe. And yet, the people don't remember that the sage that took over Natlan after Xbalanque entered the flame became a tyrant, nor that he revealed himself to be a dragon in the end, even though that's the whole thing about the Scarlet-Eyed Youth story. He became the Archon and he was praised and accepted by the tribes because he defeated the last of the dragons. Also, I know that in the records of Hananpacha it is said that the people didn't have visions because Xbalanque hadn't ascended to Archonhood yet, but do know that it is clearly stated that this book has nothing to do with historical facts, so it can be used as proof for anything. On the other hand, according to my theory, Natlan would make more sense in a previous era, specifically when Salvindagnir and Caria were built, so a very long time ago, before the Celestial Nails came down. In that case, there would be the Natlan era, then the nails came down, probably corrupting the sage just like a pet, so the sage's tyranny era began. Then the Scarlet-Eyed Youth defeated the sage, and the base concept of today's tribes was born. Then the Archon War happened, although it may not have been a thing in Natlan at all, since they never had gods that could have fought it, and then Mavuika was born 500 years ago. This timeline would give enough time for these major events to have happened, and for the people to forget how things actually went down, turning them into stories, reason why the people believe the sage to be an amazing person without knowing what he did after Xbalanque disappeared. Just remember this, although it sounds like a crazy theory, it doesn't mean that it must be 100% wrong. A year ago I said that the Pyro Archon was gonna be a human and many viewers thought I had gone crazy, and yet here we are. Okay, now let's quickly recap what I think Natlan's timeline should look like. Normally, I would divide a nation's history in 5 eras. The unified nation, then the war was capsized and the people remained in underground caves because the war was inhospitable until the Envoy Age, so Salvindagnir, the ancient underground civilization of Tsurumi Island, and the construction of Caria. Then the Celestial Nails came down and the era of the gods of old began, which ended with the Archon War, so the Archon Age, and lastly, after the Cataclysm, there's the post-Cataclysm current age. In Natlan instead, there are multiple overlapping ages, almost as layers. After the unified nation ended, the era of the Ancients began, that is, the time in which the ancient dragons ruled the land, which is split in 2 sections, one ruled by the Dragon Sovereign and one by the Sage of the Soul and Flame. At the same time, the humans went through many different eras. The Tibal Era, right after the war was capsized, the Hananpacha era, when the people founded the first tribe, Xbalanque's era in Natlan, and then the Great Alliance with the birth of the 6 tribes we know today. After that, the Archon War happened, and this is where my next theory begins. If there's one thing I've always been sure of, is that the statues of the 7 depict the Archons that won the Archon War, so when the statues first appeared, but we've never been able to fully confirm or deny it because apart from Zhongli and Venti, Makoto and A are twins, so the statues would look the same either way. Same goes for Sumeru because Rukkhadevata expanded her powers to save the people of Deshret and reverted back to a child before she became the Archon, so she looked exactly like Nahida. Fontaine is a little trickier, and it could also work in my favor because we've never seen Egeria, nor anyone has ever described her to us. We only have this stylized mural that doesn't really tell us much, but Furina uses the medium female model while the statue clearly depicts a tall one, so it could actually confirm my theory. When it comes to Natlan though, we perfectly know that the Archon from the Archon War is not Mavuika because every Pyro Archon is human and have normal lifespans. I already know that many of you wrote in the comment section that Xbalanque was the Archon from the Archon War, and I understand that it's hard to even consider something that goes against a long-standing certainty, even though we should be used to it by now. Anyway, the other mainstream theory about the statues is that they change every time a new Archon is chosen and no one noticed because so far, as we said before, the new Archons look exactly like their predecessors. But it would mean that the statue in Natlan would have changed every 60 or 70 years, but that has never been mentioned anywhere. The next problem is that Mavuika was the Archon during the Cataclysm, then she put her life on hold, but somehow the statue 500 years later still depicts her, and this is clearly a problem because Kachina clearly said,
"The statue of the Seven may look a lot like our current Archon, but that has to be a coincidence. Countless people have held that title over the years."
So she basically confirmed that the statue, at least from the Cataclysm, didn't change. You could say that the statue used to change before Mavuika, but since she put her life on hold, she remained the Archon because she never completely died, and you would be wrong because her successors did become true Archons. They obtained the Archon powers, which are evident considering their hair turned into flames, but they also received the knowledge of their predecessors. So it's basically like one for all, a consciousness that is inherited by the next in line, who in turn will also contribute to it. Now, if you, as a hypothetical person from Natlan, knew that the statue changed every time a new Archon ascended, but it didn't change when Mavuika's successor ascended 500 years ago, wouldn't you have, at the very least, written about it? And we're not even considering the tiny problem that there have been both male and female Pyro Archons throughout history. To be fair, this changing statue theory could have been easily destroyed since version 4.2. If the statue always changes to depict the current Archon, then why are there still statues in Fontaine, considering that there is no Archon nor will there ever be one anymore to rule the nation? Now, what is my theory about the statue in Natlan, you might be asking? Well, it's both very easy and extremely complicated. We know that Tvat works in a particular kind of cycle, so when people die, their memories go back to Irminsul and are used to make a new person, who will share a very similar fate with the previous owner of those memories. It's essentially a kind of reincarnation. The same may be happening in Natlan, only the effect is stronger because the nation has its own unique version of the ley lines, the Night Kingdom, so the memories that need to be processed are literally always the same and they belong solely to the people of Natlan. We don't know the rules that Xbalanque created for a person to ascend to Archonhood, but I can easily exclude a specific ancient name, otherwise they wouldn't have to win the pilgrimage. The tribes would recognize the ancient name and make those people their Archon. But despite that, there is also probably a unique but secret ancient name that only specific, unique people receive, who then inevitably become Archons, and this may actually be Xbalanque's ancient name, that was inherited by the Scarlet-Eyed Youth, then by the woman who became the Archon during the Archon War, and lastly by Mavuika, a name that is woven in the womb. This theory is based on a specific aspect I told you earlier. Xbalanque entered the Sacred Flame. He didn't die of old age, he put his life on hold in the Night Kingdom. Then we have the Scarlet-Eyed Youth that somehow came from the Night Kingdom, and I believe that that was Xbalanque's reincarnation. But because who knows how many millennia had passed, his memories were washed away in the Night Kingdom, and only his instincts remained, that is to defend Natlan. Then the Scarlet-Eyed Youth also entered the Sacred Flame, and just like Xbalanque, it took too long for him to be reincarnated, so the woman that became the Archon during the Archon War didn't receive his memories, but just his might and instincts. I suspect this woman was born right when Natlan was about to face another catastrophe that could have destroyed the nation, and once victorious, she also entered the Sacred Flame, where she stayed for 2500 years, so probably still too long for Mavuika to inherit her full memories, but not her appearance, reason why she looks just like the person from the statue. When Mavuika did the same though, she retained all her memories, and that's because she came back to life after only 500 years, so she didn't spend too long in the Night Kingdom. Now, when it comes to the Cataclysm, we know that Mavuika was a member of the Science of the Canopy who became the Archon right when all hell broke loose in the entire world. She then approached a warrior that was exiled from his tribe, Tenoch, because Natlan was neither united nor peaceful, so it needed a strong hero to guide them against the Abyss. He then recruited 6 people, 1 from each tribe. Menelek from the Flower Feather clan because his companion was Holawakam Gobo, now known as the Gold Flame Kukusor Tyrant because of the Flame Lord's blessing. Burkina from the Science of the Canopy, who bore the ancient name Malipo, Turnfire, accompanied by Kongamato, now known as the gluttonous Yumkasor Mountain King. The giant Tupac from the people of the Springs, who bore the ancient name Umoja, Unity, who obviously didn't have a Koholosor companion due to his massive size. Sunjata, the chief of the mines, so from the Children of the Echoes, accompanied by Muhuru. Sanhaj Kompore, who, as Tito said, came from the Masters of the Nightwind, although that was already clear because he foresaw his death, and divination is what this tribe specializes in, accompanied by his Animasaurian, the Iktomisor Mahamba. By the way, considering Tenoch's colors, I think he was originally from the same tribe, reason why Sanhaj had already experienced the talking stick in the past. And lastly, Wanjiru, who out of exclusion but also because she was a runner who was only interested in fighting, came from the collective of Plany, accompanied by her Electrosaurian, the Tatankasaur Kayeke. The group of heroes then went to fight against the Abyss in a place that later became known as Mare Jivari, and I think this is once again Natlan for 2 reasons. In the Volcano Lord and the Shadow Pains, it is said that Sunjata went with Tenoch to fight the Abyss on the island in the far west of the Children of the Echoes, and Natlan is basically an island west of their village, and because the Abyss was released in the Girdle of the Sand, where the gates of Karya are, and the fastest way to get to Natlan would have been through Natlan. Plus, Mare Jivari is said to have sand because it's close to the desert, lava, and a huge strange mountain could actually be a volcano, ashes, and the place was set on fire multiple times, but it was also defined as Cinder City in the scroll of the Hero Cinder City artifact set, and because Natlan doesn't have ley lines, the souls of the memories of the foreigners who died there wouldn't be able to come back home. Back to the Cataclysm, the Abyss eventually invaded Natlan, and each tribe was affected in a specific way, as if the Abyss used the main feature of each tribe's land to its advantage. On the other hand, the heroes fought the Abyss, won the fight, but they all died. Mavuika brought them all back to life except for Tenoch, because he had lost his ancient name long before the fight. Together, they calculated that Natlan would have had about 500 years before the Abyss fully enveloped the Night Kingdom, so they devised a plan to prevent this from happening. Mavuika then sent the heroes back to their families, instituted the Night Warden Wars to keep the Sacred Flame burning since the Abyss fears its light, and entered the Sacred Flame to put her life on hold, because Natlan doesn't have gods, so no one could have used their divine powers or a curse to extend her lifespan. Anyway, the first part of Mavuika's plan was simple. The next Archons would have focused on rebuilding the tribes, reuniting the people, and strengthening the Wayub. In the meantime, 6 new people would have inherited the ancient names of the heroes from the Cataclysm, and with them the knowledge about the plan, so that 500 years later, Mavuika would have come back to life and both Natlan and the new heroes would have been ready to completely defeat the Abyss. Things didn't go as planned. The Abyss corrupted the Night Kingdom so badly that communication between the Wayub and the Sacred Flame was blocked, so although 6 people did inherit those ancient names, they knew nothing about the plan. The Night Kingdom became a dangerous place, where the monsters and the manifestations of abyssal energy would devour people until they became one with the Sea of Souls. So the Abyss changed its strategy. It began to target the Wyatt so that the people wouldn't be safe anymore, losing faith in the cause and giving up and fearing the pilgrimage, in order to prevent the production of contending fire and pyro energy required to keep the sacred flame burning, which is what is preventing the Abyss from destroying Natlan. So what's gonna happen now? Mavuika's plan was not revealed, but considering how many times she remarked the Traveler's ability to transcend fate, it's clear what she's trying to achieve. Her plan involves some kind of joint effort, both because Tupac said that the Pyro Archons plan will unite them as one, but also because Natlan's salvation lies on everybody, not just a single person, and certainly not on Mavuika alone. Which makes me think that she will sacrifice herself to help everybody win, especially because Komonqui said that the Pyro Archon is keeping her power for herself instead of sharing it with her people, making everybody just as powerful. Mavuika's plan though cannot be set in motion yet because, as we said before, although 6 people have already received the ancient names of the heroes from the Cataclysm, not all of them know about the plan, and so far only Shilonen from the Children of the Echoes, Kinich from the Science of the Canopy, Mualani from the People of the Springs, and Ian-san from the Collective of Plenty received that knowledge. There are 2 heroes, one from the Flower Feather clan and one from the Masters of the Night Wind, that are still unaware of their role, and those are probably the 2 tribes we will visit in 5.1, because we can already see their village while we see nothing about the Collective of Plenty. Since this process can be forced, but Mavuika openly talked about it in front of Chaska, she's probably not the hero from the Flower Feather clan. Considering we have 3 women and 1 man, maybe the last 2 warriors will be men, that is if Hoyoverse cared about balance, which we know they don't, but I'll still place my bet on Aoife, the Saurian vet from Chaska's clan. When it comes to the Masters of the Nightwind instead, I think it's pretty easy. It's not Granny Citlali, yes, Granny, it seems like this antisocial high priestess is way older than she looks. I am 99% sure it's Ororon, the one who's helping Capitano. Mavuika perfectly knows who the heroes are, and that's the reason why she didn't dispel the fog he summoned. She's letting him do his thing, even if that opposes her, probably because that's what he needs to do for his ancient name to awaken. Of course, as you might have noticed by now, the heroes who accompanied the Scarlet-Eyed Youth most definitely had these same specific ancient names. Reason why Ororon, just like the craftsman, comes from the Masters of the Nightwind and wears a hood that covers half of his face. Lastly, these names could have also originated back when Chuck reconnected Natlan to the Night Kingdom. Since Chuck and his companions most likely became the Wyatt to protect Natlan, their names may have become the first ever ancient names, inherited by those heroes who will, just like them, save Natlan from the biggest dangers. Before talking about Capitano, we need to briefly talk about a few more things. Also, now that I changed the name of the channel, very soon I will upload a new video with everything I got right, or almost completely right, about Natlan since my very first speculation video about this nation a year ago, so I hope you'll be interested in it. Talking about the things I got right, even though Mavuika is not a god, she still has an Arsketia name, and we were told which one it was by an NPC, so you really have to look for it. The name is Haburim, and a whole year ago I said that her demon name was gonna be Ami, the human-shaped pillar of flame that sacrificed himself becoming a sun who then went supernova, who is also known as, you guessed it, Haburim. This is a major satisfaction to be honest, since everybody was sure it was obviously gonna be Phoenix. I also have a bone to pick with the writers when it comes to what Arlecchino told Neuvillette. She said that Capitano threw himself into the endless ring of war, which literally means that he joined the tournament and yet he didn't at all. Did they simply change their mind since 4.2, just like they did with Chaska's vision? And about Chaska, considering her double personality when she loses control because of a rare disease, she really sounds like cryomaterial, so I wonder why they went for Anemo at the last second. Also, could it be that her disease is the Flame Lord's blessing even though she's human? I mean, her clan was really close to the ancient dragons and she was raised by the Cucosaurs as if she were one herself, so I wouldn't exclude it. And lastly, one thing Ganyu said back in Liyue is now completely false. Nahida, who by then was already 500 years old, is not the youngest of the 7, because the Pyro Archons, as humans, will always live for around 100 years at best. With this out of the way, it's finally time to talk about Capitano. My theory is still the same as in my previous video. I still think it's Tenoch. Actually 5.0 basically confirmed it for me. In my previous video, I said that Tenoch died in the Cataclysm, he lost his ancient name so he couldn't have been revived, so he turned into a pitch black being like Tupac, but instead of disappearing as he should have, he managed to survive by sheer willpower and now is in Natlan to earn a new ancient name in order to be resurrected. Tenoch did die in the Cataclysm, but as we said before, he was the only one who couldn't have been resurrected because he lost his ancient name when he was exiled. Then, at the end of the Archon quest, we saw Mavuika walking in what seems to be her mental or memory place, her consciousness. Talking about her consciousness, I don't think Mavuika actually gave up on her power, because that face she made was sus, and because in that place we did see this sun kind of thing that could mean that she still has her Archon powers. Anyway, there we witnessed what Tenoch told her back during the Cataclysm. Not only did he oppose the Archon even though he eventually helped her, but he said that his rage would never know absolution, and if Mavuika didn't deliver on her promise, he would have found a way to collect the debt. Almost identically, Capitano knows the secret of the ley lines, and Tenoch seems to be from the Masters of the Nightwind, that specialize in the Night Kingdom. But above all, he spoke of an oath made 500 years ago that still remains unfulfilled. Mavuika probably didn't recognize him because he looks completely different. I mean, he's a pitch black figure, he doesn't look like anyone to begin with. But she sensed an unusual presence within him, the same thing Auroron seems to have heard as well. And the fact that they panned out to where Mavuika wounded him is actually kinda sus. So I think that what they sensed and heard were Tenoch's memories flowing out of his body. Anyway, Capitano is running out of time, it sounds like he doesn't have much longer to live, and Mavuika's wound made things even worse. Will Capitano be able to defeat Mavuika, or did she convince everybody to be powerless knowing he would have received that information? But above all, will Capitano be able to obtain a new ancient name and be resurrected? We can answer these questions right now, so we can only wait and see how things will turn out. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact and Star Rail Theory videos, consider subscribing. I will see you again for the video I talked about before and after Kinichu's story quest, because Enjo will most likely have something to say about the Unified Nation just like he did back in Economia. Well then, I guess it's time for the new outro, so thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.